Hi, welcome to Our Box Guitar Tuition. So today marks a special day in the history of rock. For me personally, it's the 40th anniversary of Van Halen's Fair Warning album, released on this day, April 29th, 1981. This was the first Van Halen album I ever heard in its entirety. It's also the first Van Halen album I ever bought, and it reignited my interest in guitar and never looked back. So where does this fit in the lexicon of Van Halen releases? You know, these features a called classic album inspections, and that can mean it's an album that I think is a classic, or it's an album of interest, or an out-and-out classic. So typically with Van Halen, people would point to Van Halen 1 or 1984 as their classic albums, their biggest selling ones. But for a lot of fans, this is the firm favourite and their finest hour, and I wouldn't dispute that. So basically, this time Van Halen have done 3 albums. They've, reshaped, redefined the hard rock and metal landscape with their debut album. Followed it up with the sort of lighter, more poppy Van Halen 2, making a good sort of companion piece. And then did a kind of darker, sort of kind of more grungier album in Women and Children First, I feel. And Fair Warning picks up where that leaves off, but it leaves the kind of some of the sunshine elements of that album, leaves them behind. In a lot of ways, this album's like an album like Power Age by AC/DC, in that it's almost all kind of deep cuts. Obviously, there's a couple of tracks on here which are very, very well known, the classic Van Halen tracks. But the other ones, less so. They don't get played live as much or played on classic rock radio. But the quality is pretty much all the way through. We'll come to that. I suppose you could say Stained Class by Judas Priest is seen as the greatest album. In actual fact, that's kind of deep cuts as well. Exciter and Beyond the Realms of Death, you take them out, they're almost exclusively deep cuts. I think the album's all the better for that. There's a real depth to this album. I think that really starts with the guitar sound. I've always said Eddie Van Halen's guitar sound never sounded more browner than on this album. It's got that brassy top end and attack of the Van Halen 1 album, but it's got the warmth and the grunt of the Women and Children First album. And those combine. The bottom end on this guitar sounds something quite extraordinary. If you listen to the riff to the track Unchained, you can hear the clank of the bottom end, and there's also on the solo to hear about it later, he whacks the E string before he goes for a run in the solo, and you can just hear it throwing. The bass is great as well. Again, you've got Mike Lanty's, the bass sounds kind of evolved, and it's again, it's got that lovely bottom end from Van Halen 1, but it's got a bit more kind of clarity. And then Alex Van Halen's drum sound, I would say this is, really captures the classic Al Van Halen drum sound, that tightly tuned snare, but with enough bottom end, so it's got a bigness to it. So this album was recorded, I'm just checking my Wikipedia, thank you, early March to early April 1981. I looked on another site, it alleged it was recorded in 12 days for $40,000. Sunset Sound Studio, so the band, this is where, I'm guessing it's Warner Brothers must have owned this studio. They always went there with Ted Templeman. But basically, a lot of the album was written, Eddie Van Halen was getting kind of despondent, he was starting to fall out with Daily Roth at this point. Obviously, they had delved into cover versions on other albums. This album has no cover versions for a start. And Eddie Van Halen would often hang back with Don Landy after the other lot had gone home, and they'd work on material. And it was him kind of carving out his space, I guess. And then this was the inspiration that he would eventually get his own studio as well, having that space to work the 5150 studio that he worked from, after this. So what's the tracks like? Obviously, it starts off with one of their very greatest Van Halen songs. This was actually evolved from an old song called Voodoo Lounge, which was kind of on the Van Halen demos. I think it's called Voodoo something, apologies. And the bridge of it was from a track called She's a Woman, which actually appeared later on A Different Kind of Truth. But of course it's Mean Streets, so it starts with an incredible intro where Eddie Van Halen kind of slaps harmonics on his guitar and does a kind of percussive piece. I still can't do it, I've seen people who can. And then it goes into, an amazing riff, but I think what stands out on this song is the groove, and that's something this album's got. It's got incredible groove on it. Van Halen have always had a groove, and I think a friend of mine pointed out, the Van Halen brothers were Dutch immigrants. Daily Roth hung around with a lot of the African American kids at school. He was listening to a lot of soul, funk music. He wasn't, following the typical rock path. And there's a real melting pot in Van Halen, and this has got a lot of funk and a lot of soul to it. This record, it's a phenomenal track. Mean Streets. It's very dark. Rofter's a great lyric. On this album, there's a lot of middle section breakdowns where David Roth will do spoken word thing, and that was something that was kind of ripped off really by other bands as we went into the glam and hair metal era. But there's nothing glam or hair metal about this record. It's a full on hard rock heavy metal masterpiece. Eddie's solo is phenomenal. It's very angry. I think he said his interviews with Guitar World retrospectively on this album said how angry the solos are on this. But yeah, so Mean Streets, absolute classic. So that's like one of the well-known tracks you would hear on classic rock radio and stuff. Track 2's actually kind of, if not my favourite, one of my favourites. Obviously Mean Streets, and a track we'll come to later would pip it, I guess. But Dirty Movies. It's an interesting story about this. It's got a slide guitar on this. I think he played slide guitar, Eddie Van Halen, on the track Could This Be Magic off Women and Children First. But basically he couldn't reach up the fret. He had a Les Paul Jr., so he cut the bottom horn off it to do it. But what's great about this, Eddie Van Halen, you never really see him playing slide much, but it's a fantastic slide part. And quite interesting, it's got overdubbed, I suppose, rhythm guitars underneath. Often when he broke off the lead, it would just cut to lead and, it all done in one pass. Again, it's got an incredible groove. There's a bit where the drums break down and David Roth does another kind of spoken word bit. And Michael Anthony's bass, boom, boom, boo-doo, it's properly funky. Michael Anthony, he gets overlooked so much. Obviously, people talk about his backing vocal contribution, which there's less harmonies on this album. It's less Sunshine Beach Boy style backing vocals. But his bass worked great on this, and he really stands out. It's probably his finest performance as a bass player. Again, fantastic arrangement on this track, really good sections. One of the things with this album is all the little middle sections and the pre-choruses, or bridges that I call them, are so well done. Just the craft on the songs. The length, Mean Streets is 4:58 and Dirty Movies is 4:08, which is pretty long for Van Halen tracks. Next track is the up-tempo, the kind of fastest track of the album, Sinner's Swing. Not as good as the previous two, but it's a really welcome track when it comes. Again, it's got a fantastic sort of up-tempo feel, kind of almost jazzy drum fills and that. And Eddie does an insane solo where he kind of goes into chromatic madness, but it just makes sense. So that's a great track. And then side one of the original vinyl finished with Hear About It Later. Now this is, this was a track they'd play live, so, it would be sort of the most well-known deep cut. Interesting, again, the bridge on this, it's in 4/4 time, but it goes into like a bar of 6 with the bridges, and there is some time, sort of interesting timing things on the album. Really lovely kind of flanged intro with lovely clean chords by Eddie. He does a brilliant solo, the solo breakdown on this, again, it's got a brilliant groove. Alex and Michael lay down something really cool, and Eddie does like, one of his best solos for me. And that finishes side one. And it's just a great, kick off, for off the bat. So the next track is what got me into Van Halen properly, and it's one of the all-time classics, Unchained. For some people, maybe the greatest riff ever in hard rock. So Eddie Van Halen uses the flanger on this to chug the bottom E notes. It's in drop D tuning. I would say it's not the first riff in metal to use that, but I think it's the riff that popularised that as like, right, I can play in drop D tuning and just get a different sonic landscape. But brilliant. The bridge on this, again, I counted it's kind of 13 beats, so it's like 2 bars of 4 and a bar of 5. Or I'm not sure how a drummer would count it, but it's really, the bridge is something really special on this in music. It's unlike anything else, really. Really catchy chorus. This was a single with a song called So This Is Love, which we'll come up to. It's an amazing track. It's an all-time great hard rock track. Then one of the really interesting tracks, probably the really top deep cut just coming in under 4 minutes, this push comes to shove. So at this time, obviously, you can feel the influence of the Police in rock music and white reggae. So the Scorpions, I think, were the first hard rock band I remember doing a soul reggae groove with if Is There Anybody There for the Love Drive album. Then Judas Priest did the intro to The Rage off British Steel, in the middle section of a track called You Say Yes on the Point of Entry album. Rush as well, same year, Vital Signs. You know, rock bands experimenting with kind of feels like that, not pure reggae. So this has got that groove again. Michael and Alex stand out on this. And it's got quite a long extended solo. And Eddie does, he does a brilliant lead break on it. And David Roth does really cool vocals on this. It's really kind of smoky atmosphere, some a cool kind of spoken word bit again at the start. So that's a great track. And then, so this is Love, number 7. This was a single. This is probably the most upbeat poppy track off the album. This is the track which would probably fit on Van Halen 2. It's in the kind of Beautiful Girls kind of vibe. But it's really good. Got a really lovely little kind of bluesy solo by Eddie. It kind of finishes the proper tracks, as I call them. If I've got a criticism of the album, it does tail off. I wish in some ways they'd come up with another track. Like a lot of Van Halen albums. Van Halen 1's got 11 tracks, 10 proper songs. Van Halen 2 had 9 proper songs and 1 little instrumental. And Women and Children First are kind of 8 tracks and instrumental, whereas this has got 7 tracks, a short instrumental and then a kind of half track. So Sunday Afternoon in the Park, again, it kind of shows where the band will go. Eddie's cracked out the synth on this. It's pretty kind of experimental with a really cool drum beat by Alex. And obviously, synth pop's getting more popular. Like I was reading an article just then, comparing to kind of Gary Newman kind of sounds and stuff like that. Obviously on the Diver Down album, they would pull out the synths for Dancing in the Streets and stuff like that. And obviously on the have a huge hit with Jump. So I like the track. I think the problem for me is I want a kind of it's a lead into a mega tune, but it goes into One Foot Out of the Door, which was apparently was just jammed out in one take before they finished recording and left the studio for good. It's pretty cool little synth riff on it, the kind of crossfades. Dave kind of raps along and then Eddie does a long extended solo. It's pretty cool. But again, it just would have been nice to have another track in there just to kind of finish on that high. So kind of unlike like Power Age that I mentioned before, which I think you can sort of compare as kind of a deeper fourth album or Staying Class or something like that. It doesn't finish as strongly this album, but it is a 9 out of 10. When it's great, you could argue Van Halen were never greater. Just a little bit about the artwork. It was done by a guy, he's a Canadian artist. So I'm just looking down my thing here. It was called The Maze, and it was by a troubled and mentally unstable artist called William Curleek. He was Canadian apparently. But Alex found like a collage he did, but he initially was just interested in the image on the cover of the guy headbutting the wall. But just looking at the artwork here, I think they've taken, some bits of it, or maybe he did another picture. But on the inside sleeve, there was a really moody picture of the band, looking quite mature. And then on the other side was kind of graffiti with the lines from Mean Streets on. Also, everything about the guitar sound, I thought they'd sort of crank the amps on this, but they were using kind of smaller amps. Maybe they were isolating the sound more on this one. And that may have contributed to Eddie getting more bottom end and his sound being browner. I'm not sure. I tried to look for more information about how he did that. But I think on this album as well, he kind of, the use of flanger and phaser, he's kind of bringing back those sounds from Van Halen 1. But it's, it's got no interest in being that commercial, this album, and it's the lowest and slowest selling album. It was declared double platinum in 1994, this is in the David Roth era. But it's never achieved triple platinum like Women and Children or the other albums which went above and beyond that, 2 of their albums of diamond status. And again, comparing it to AC/DC's Power Age, which is only single platinum, it's a strange one. It's true, real deep fans love this record. But obviously it's not a Van Halen album that people will go out and buy, if they just want to kind of check out Van Halen. But, and just coming back to the artwork, I think the artwork's quite strange. It hasn't got the classic Van Halen logo on. It's it sets itself apart from their other records. But I think all the Van Halen albums with David Roth are all very individual in that respect. So yeah, 40 years old today, undoubtedly, a masterpiece. Like I say, tails off just a little for me, but just some of the greatest. I think the greatest playing collectively by Alex, Eddie, and Michael, and David Roth. He does a fantastic sort of. I don't know, metal crooner thing in it. Again, just bringing a different dynamic to his performance. Like I say, it was there was Ruptions appearing in the band, but out of Ruptions, great things happen, and that is the story of Fair Warning. Cheers, thanks very much.